Hi, and welcome to the Human Side of Business podcast. I'm Ange MacCabe, CEO and co-founder of Intuitive Performance. I'm a performance coach, HR professional, whole person leadership facilitator, and your host. The Human Side of Business podcast is fueled by the genuine curiosity to understand how personal characteristics and skills can be leveraged to drive individual and team performance, tangible outcomes, and ultimately organizational success within business. Each podcast is devoted to sharing knowledge, expanding our learning edges, and exploring the trends in corporate culture towards growing the emotional intelligence of organizations. I'm so glad you're here. Hi, and welcome to the Human Side of Business podcast. I'm Ange MacCabe, CEO and co-founder of Intuitive Performance. I'm a performance coach, HR professional, whole person leadership facilitator, and your host. The Human Side of Business podcast is fueled by the genuine curiosity to understand how personal characteristics and skills can be leveraged to drive individual and team performance, tangible outcomes, and ultimately organizational success within business. Each podcast is devoted to sharing knowledge, expanding our learning edges, and exploring the trends in corporate culture towards growing the emotional intelligence of organizations. I'm so glad you're here. Guide them. Warm welcome, everyone, to Monique Russell, who's the Global Communication Skills Advisor you want on your team. She teaches leaders and teams how to upskill and keep top talent engaged through strategic leadership developments. Organizations like Amazon, Microsoft, Google, the Center of Disease Control, Verizon, Intel, Equifax, and the world's biggest airport, Atlanta Hartsfield-Jackson International. P.S. I was there. It's really big. Basically, all of these organizations and huge names trust Monique in implementing communication strategies that foster connection, community, creativity, and courage. You can too. Monique is the CEO of Clear Communication Solutions, an international training, coaching, and consulting firm, the author of The Ultimate Speaker's Guide and the book International Motherhood, Who Said It Would Be Easy, and the host of the Bridge to You podcast. A warm welcome, Monique. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you so much, Ange. I'm excited to dive in.
Yes. Before we really get to the nitty-gritty, I'm really curious. Tell me more about this book, the motherhood book. Who Said It Would Be Easy. I'd love to hear more about that. I'm and understanding the ties to your background and what you're currently doing now.
Okay, so intentional motherhood, who said it would be easy, is really all about exactly what it says, being very intentional. And so this was birthed out of the pandemic. And I birthed it because I really wanted to create a body of work that disrupted the status quo and challenged the limiting mindset and belief that women tend to have when we become mothers. And it's definitely a lot about my own journey, because I had my first son as a teenage mother, and I was like the absolute best teenage mother you would find on the planet, literally. Like I did not, I was so happy to be a mom. I was in college at that time and I was working 2 jobs, and he was with me everywhere, so much to the point that he got featured on one of the business department's magazines. And it was just a really, really good time. And it just helped me to really understand. I didn't know when I was going through the process what my mindset was or what my approach was.
Right.
But in retrospect, when I thought about it, I was like, it was basically because I wasn't exposed to the limiting beliefs that, if you have a child and you're a teenage mom, you're going to be a statistic, or you're going to struggle, or you're going to, whatever have you. Because I grew up in a household where I watched TV 1 day a week for an hour. Like my mom was super strict, but I love to read. I love to go into different, activities. So when I had my kid, I didn't see myself as handicapped. I just felt like, I had a kid and I'm going to go to school and I'm going to finish my degree and I'm going to get another one and I'm going to work and do whatever. And the long and short of it is that when I was done, I was asked to teach other women who were twice my age, who had children who were going to school, how to approach this mindset and not really see that it was something that was, limiting them. And so I think when we have kids, a lot of times if we don't set aside intentional time to say, what does success look like for me now as a
Mm,
mom, we
mm,
just fall into reaction. So we're still living life, and then we're like, oh, I can't keep up with all the things, and we feel like a failure. Whereas
mm.
we take so much effort and time when we're planning our vacations, when we're going, to further our education, when we're going to set time aside, what it's going to look like, even where we're going to send our kids to school. Some people have a whole spreadsheet, but when it comes to really thinking through our vision for ourselves and our identity, how we like ourselves versus how we love ourselves, not the superficial stuff, going beneath, and then
Right.
using leadership skills in time management and, in coaching to really transform our outlook. Then
Mhm.
I think when we become intentional about that, then we have a better flow.
I love that. I love that. To me, what it's speaking to is, all of those great human essential skills that leaders ought to have. It's reframing it or putting a different lens on it for mothers.
Oh, absolutely. And it
Yeah.
is a leadership. Yeah, it's all
Yes,
leadership.
yes, yes. I love this. Okay, I see the connection. And where were you 11 years ago when I had my son?
It's never too late,
I
and it's never too
know.
late.
Amazing, amazing. But we're here today together to really get into the crooks and the nitty gritty around today's market and leadership because it's not the same. As you're talking about intentional motherhood, we're looking at it from the perspective of at Intuitive Performance, especially in 2024, intentional leadership. Because essentially, what's got us to that leadership position isn't going to keep us there. And so I'd love to pick your brain, Monique, around your thoughts and what you see as trends and skill sets and like the how-to stuff.
hmm Oh, definitely. So actually earlier this week, someone shared an article with me, a Forbes written article.
Mm,
I forgot the person who was the author right now, but it referenced a McKinsey study. And in the
mm.
McKinsey study, they talked about why leadership development programs fail. And
Yes.
as I drilled down into it, one of the really big nuggets that came out was that 30% of executives agree that they miss international business opportunities because their leaders don't have the right capacity or skill to engage in international business. And I
Hmm.
said, this is so powerful. It is
Hmm.
like, we knew this coming down, the pipe ahead of time, but to actually see it in real time in print and have leaders acknowledge, like, okay, we need to be more adept in our cross-cultural communication.
Hmm.
We're in a borderless world right now. We are having customers and clients. Before it was in the multinational organizations and there were people who were doing global business, but now global business doors are open to everyone.
Hmm.
And if you don't have the skill of cultural sensitivity or cultural intelligence, you could miss opportunities. You can, damage your corporate brand or reputation and so many other things. But
Hmm.
I think when I see trends, I look at something like that because cultural intelligence was never one of the top leadership skills listed. I don't think I've seen anywhere. And
No.
then when I looked at the World Economic Forum's report, they always put out their
Mhm.
future of jobs report. The most recent one I saw, there was social influence as a
Yes.
skill. And I think one thing was dependability, or there was a category like dependability. And I'm like, this is unbelievable. So just, seeing that we're now in a workspace where different generations are all smushed together
Hmm.
and leaders have to learn how to lead all those generations
Hmm.
and how to be competent in their cultural awareness and how to have their own, emotional intelligence so that they can be able to, lead themselves. I think we're in that time where in training, one and dones, one workshop, 1 day workshop, we're realizing that it's not going to cut it. It's definitely not the solution. So I
No.
say If your program is not more than 6 months, it's a great sign that you're operating from an outdated leadership model or an outdated learning development model.
That's really interesting because oftentimes what we're still seeing in the market is agreed with you, it needs to extend. However, organizations are hesitant to spend in engagements that are 6 months plus. So we've actually seen, well, let me think about it for a second. So basically, we put out about 1,200 invites or reach outs. And this is just on the cold side, not the referral side for intuitive performance, and being totally vulnerable because I agree with you. And how do you connect that with the market? So coming full circle, where we put out so much communication for organizations, by the time we get to decision makers, the first thing they're asking is how much money is it and how much time does it take? And they will, they will kind of shut down at the timepiece if it's more than 2 hours per day or per week, I should say, and more than 8 weeks. Because we had a 12-week WPL cohort, and recommendations, full stop. We're like, hey, this has to be shorter. However, what I am seeing, which is fantastic, is that more and more employers are leaning into group coaching and
Yes.
individual leadership coaching. So it's like, okay, we know where to go for the academia stuff and the 101. It's the how-to, which is absolutely beautiful. So agreeing with you, but with context wrapped around it in the sense that it's really shifting. Like employers are expecting, bespoke types of facilitation and group coaching offerings. And if it's not, you're basically one and done, to your point.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. And when I say as far as like shifting and trends, I mean for the employer. Like if they are not, if you're an employer and you're listening to this and you are only doing the little short, programs, you're doing yourself a disservice.
Oh, absolutely.
So for sure. But have been a few who are proactively reaching out and saying, look, I don't want anything less than 6 months.
Yep.
So it's like now you're getting ready to see, like we're really thinking strategically in the long term. We're wanting behavioral change, which it takes about 6 months, for those things
You
to
got it.
sink in. So yeah.
When you're thinking about leadership, oftentimes what organizations think are like, okay, grab a LinkedIn, session, grab a micro learning session, maybe the local university or an online university. But all of those are very short sprints. It's not changing the habits. And to your point, the programs that are of value are the ones that can point to how your leaders can actually change their leadership habits, not just what habits they ought to partake in or kind of own themselves.
Absolutely. Totally with you. I'm tracking. We are preaching to the choir.
Yes, yes, yes. The thing that I'm super interested in is like from a leadership perspective, Monique, what are you seeing in the market where leaders don't know what they don't know? Like, it's not that they don't see value in it, but how do you identify that that is a pain point we're solving versus like, going more operational? Because oftentimes what I'm seeing, and I don't know about you, chime in, is that, leaders kind of look at their desk as two split, or leadership is on the side of their desk and operations and or sales and or marketing kind of supersedes the leadership piece. Rarely have I seen walking into organizations where it's integrated in the sense of you're in a leadership role, and so that's full throttle what you're speaking to with regards to being, and respecting DEIB and cultural sensitivity and emotional intelligence and all of those other great things or leadership skills that ought to be take place, but they aren't acknowledged. Like, what do you think about all that?
Yeah, so I think a lot. There's a lot. There's a lot I want to say. So first, I feel like that's the way it used to be very solidly, and that's the
Mm-hmm.
way, it still is in a lot of places. But
Mm.
I think that our shift in the market has accelerated people to thinking, like even those who are in leadership positions, they want more as well, so we see all these massive layoffs happening, but let's not just talk about layoffs that are happening. Let's talk about the people who are leaving, people who are
Mm,
choosing not to work in certain organizations because they're not aligning with their values. This
yes.
word cultural fit, it's become a two-way conversation. Before it was just the organization saying, hey, you're not a cultural fit. Now, and more, we hear employees saying, it's not a good fit. So I think we are in a time period where mindsets have been stimulated, consciousness has been awakened, and people want to have more meaning and value out
Mm,
of work. And then when we get into our generation, um, our millennials and Generation Zs, it's like, they don't want to be stressed out. They don't want to be burned out. They want to learn how to do their job better. But
mhm,
if their leader isn't equipped in helping them move through that journey or that process, they just feel like they want someone to come in who's ready to go. I don't want to have to be talking to them and teaching them and holding their hand. But they need mentoring. They definitely
mhm,
need to be mentored. So
mhm.
it's like you're gonna set yourself up for failure as a leader if you don't embrace modern leadership strategies that align with the existing shifts in the workforce. So I
Yes.
feel like, yeah, I do. In fact, recently I had someone who said, I just need leadership skills. Okay. And I'm like, okay, leadership is all encompassing. It's you, it's your thoughts, it's I can't separate a tactic from who you are as a leader. And so I think that's the awareness piece or the education piece um that could be very helpful for folks who are exploring more in that arena.
Yeah, and I heard an opportunity there too, Monique, in the sense of getting a bit more granular because leaders understand a lot of the best practices in today's market. Resiliency, digital literacy, emotional intelligence, being creative, that beautiful word pivot that we heard for the past 3 years, et cetera, et cetera. However, I think where there's an opportunity to really kind of dive down are those situations where you may have a baby boomer leader and a Gen Z employee, for example. Hypothetically speaking, let's just say I spoke to someone today.
Mhm.
And what had happened was the leader has the expectation of, I will give you all the information. I expect you to learn that information, be proactive, human centric, customer serving, and understand my expectations. And if you don't, then you should be asking me. Whereas our Gen Zs are asking more questions and pushing back. They're like, well, what does that policy mean? And where did it come from? And what does this mean culturally within the organization or internationally? Did you think about this? And I have a suggestion about this. And there's what I would call natural tensions now between generations because as leaders, oftentimes we're not leading with curiosity, we're leading with judgment. And what I mean by that is, well, they didn't do that, so they're a lazy employee. Or they didn't hear me that first time, by the way, even though habits take at least 6 months to create. Remember that?
Mhm.
So therefore XYZ judgments passed. And so I find this kind of dynamic really interesting for leaders to really understand that to be successful as a leader, it's not just about what type of core competencies you can grab, from Brown or Harvard or Yale or wherever, but rather, how are you showing up as a leader? What's your why? How are you meeting people where they're at? And if you can't answer those questions, then that's the time where you need to dive in and get that extenuated or experiential coaching experience to ensure that you can understand the how-to of all of these great leadership skill sets.
Yeah, I am in alignment. I feel like the academic portion, the theory portion, like the teaching, the informational piece,
Yes,
it's something that a lot of people feel like once they have it, that it's a sign that they know how to do it. I've
beautifully put.
yeah, I've gone to this program. I have this certification.
Yeah.
Certification really doesn't tell me anything outside of you completed this program. You might
Fair.
have fast forwarded to all the videos, especially if it was self-paced. But then when it, then if You're laughing because are
It's
you
true.
familiar? It's true. It's true. You fast forward to the video to the end, skip whatever. But that's actually, I'm not going to digress, but that's something else I think when it comes to micro learning, it's like we're evaluating the wrong thing. We're
Mm,
evaluating, we're still using these outdated methods of evaluation to say learning took place, transformation took place. We're expecting managers and leaders to be coaches when they haven't been coached themselves. Like,
right.
come on, why are we doing this to our people? We can do better. So I
Hmm.
think when it comes to the multi-generational conversations and helping people to experience, sometimes when you look at the organization and you see like some of the data around how many of a certain generation is going to be in a company culture, when you look at that, and if your company culture has more Gen Zs and more millennials than or more boomers, vice versa, whatever,
Right.
that's going to be a critical factor for you in terms of how well you embrace these new mindsets and new skills. I had someone reach out to me, and after our initial conversation, we realized that it was like 56% of their employee population was Gen Z. Well, that
Mm,
would explain why all of these particular issues were happening in a certain category.
right.
But the good thing is, sometimes these leaders are saying, look, I need help. Like, this isn't working. What
Hmm.
what I used to do when I was leading and managing, like, it's not working. We're having too much conflict, and they're not respecting me. So we need to do something different.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What do you recommend? What is that something different?
So I believe when it comes to soft skills, especially,
Mhm.
some people use like the experiential. Some people use coaching as a way, private coaching or group coaching as a way to dive deeper. And I think that has to be a part of everybody's
Mm,
um, growth and development plan, especially if we're requiring so much from them.
right.
And then it has to be something that's continuous, not just a self-paced version or some resources, because people are time crunched
Hmm.
and they need motivation and they need accountability. So I would definitely say any type of development solution should have some component of coaching, where we're not just sitting in reflection, but we're sitting in reflection and we're actively integrating, and then we're going out and doing.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think there's a couple layers to that onion, to be totally honest. So there's the HR component or the people and culture side of things. There's programming, there's operational, and then there's that leadership skill set. And that's where I feel like we're missing a lot of connectivity. So having the background or being blessed with having knowledge from a people culture perspective, as well as a coach and or EIQ speaker, you can see the dynamics there. And what I mean by that is oftentimes when we're speaking to organizations anyways, they don't have a training path for the jobs that they have within their organization. So when you're like, okay, well, what skill sets should leaders have? And they're like, well, there's this list. And we're like, okay, well, where does this list come from? I don't know. We're still working on it. Awesome. That's great. I think that's fantastic. And then, so what do you do with that list? Well, we're not really sure. And the response to that is it really comes down to either skills matrices or training tracks and or both. And what to your point, where we're thinking about it from an older approach, is that a leader picks a core competency with their direct supervisor or their boss or their VP or what have you. They go take that course, they have the certificate for the course, so therefore they passed. Versus the leader has a path and they know what type of culture they're working within and what type of human essential skills they need that matter, not just operational pieces, and they're going to be evaluated. So after the 6 months, after the 12 months, there's maybe a 360. There's more feedback, there's more conversation. They're looking at KPIs or key predictive indicators in the sense of, okay, how did Ange grow or how did Monique grow from this leadership course or this opportunity for group coaching or individual coaching, etc. So that's kind of the people and culture side of things. The operational side of things, I feel like it's more of a mindset shift in that, to your point, gone are the days that you can separate, leadership from the things that we do on a daily basis in our job. It's one and the same, where it's really about whole person performance, and getting organizations behind that. It will allow them to snuff out a lot of those fires that they feel like they're continuously putting out with their humans or their people in their organization. And then there's the actual leadership skill competencies and in how you're looking at yourself as a leader. And to me, I strongly believe it's around being introspective first. And it's kind of like, hey, I need to look at myself naked from a leadership perspective. What are the facts here? What type of feedback am I getting from my team members? Where are my strengths and my opportunities? And how do I fulfill those gaps? And I think once you have those types of layers, even somewhat, maybe 60% of the way starting to build on as an organization, that's when you can see true change from a leadership perspective.
Yeah,
In my opinion.
No, I agree. I agree. I love it. Part of the introspective process or journey is being able to have people who are on your development team who are willing to confront what's being shown if it's not helpful or if it's not working.
Right.
And I do believe like that's an area of struggle. Like, I remember years ago, I had a mentor who, he was in the EI space for 30, 40 years and he had retired and he was working with C-suite leaders. And he said, I'm so glad I'm done because you just get to telling them what they want to hear. Like they bring you in and you tell them what they want to hear and then you move on. Now, mind you, he's from a different generation, but still, I think he has a lot of truth, and I think some of that still applies today because people tend to think through, okay, I don't want to rock the boat, even though I'm being brought in as a external professional or a partner. I don't want to really say something that might make someone feel uncomfortable, but we have to partner with trainers, consultants, teachers, coaches who are willing to sit in the discomfort for themselves. It's not just the person who's on the other end. It's the person who's also giving the feedback.
Absolutely.
Like to sit in that discomfort and help them get to that next point where, that they can reach and they know they can reach, but we just have to get through the messy feelings to get there. So that's a piece I don't think that's discussed much, but it's very significant in terms of where true transformation can happen.
I love everything that you're saying and subscribe to all of it. I think a totally different podcast could be allocated just for dealing with the messy or the sticky feelings as a leader, because it's huge and we don't look at it. Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. The other thing that was coming up for me that I find quite interesting is when it comes to that transformational perspective as a leader, helping them to empower themselves, I think, is the goal when it comes to facilitation and coaching, in the sense of, I can walk alongside you, but I'm not going to make you do it. And at the end of the day, I can help you take off the blinders, but it's your choice as to what you do with the information or the epiphanies that you're having from your own leadership styles, right? So it's kind of, how do I say it? I find that when leaders have the same agenda, or when leaders have the ability and wherewithal to take on the agenda of the type of leadership that they need to jump into, that's where you see the amazing transformational stuff. Because to your point, I think we're saying the same thing, Monique, just a little bit differently, in that a leader that's open to do that self-reflection or the introspection can therefore receive that feedback much better and non-personally from their team, not just from self-observed reports, which are very important. But there's, again, multiple layers that you need to kind of consider as yourself as a whole leader. We're complex, right? And I strongly feel that when we're working with leaders, it's really important at the front of an engagement to co-create goals, because I've seen it work both ways in my experience, where the leader's like, I know I need a better leader, but I don't know what to do. So you need to tell me. And it's, I've learned to be like, I will help you navigate and we can co-create together. Versus because what happens is that it's not their agenda. And what I'm trying to get to is when you have a clear path as a leader, especially when it comes to those essential human skills, that again is where the dominoes almost flip, right? Like leaders have aha moments and they're like, okay, I need to go back and practice this. And then I'm going to tell you about it. And then I'll journal about it and I'll reflect some more. And then I'll unpack it even more and try it again. So it's almost like when it comes to leadership, what I'm trying to say is A, it needs to be their agenda that you co-create. B, it needs to be something that leaders can take a step back and look at it almost as an experiment. So with technology, for example, it's safe to fail because the faster we fail, the faster we get to the next iteration or from the beta to the alpha, etc. In leadership, it's not looked at in the same lens. And I totally think it should, because creating those habits, unfortunately, at this point in time, you have to go back to the people that you're leading and have that trial and error perspective. I think it might just have to do with regards to how you set it up.
I agree. When you were talking, I thought about an experience I had when I was, going through my own coaching and counseling experience. And I remember one time I went into my coach's office. Was my coach or my counselor? He was both. And I remember I was like, you know what? I just need I can't see the picture from inside the frame. I don't know what I don't know. I don't know what I need. Fix me. I said, just fix me. And it's so funny because I can remember my thought process back then. And I thought I was so smart, so super smart. And here I am, I'm getting a counselor, I'm getting a coach, and I'm asking him to fix me. Like, just tell me what to do. And luckily, he was skilled enough to guide me through that journey of,
Mm,
to your point, co-creating and
mm,
helping me to illuminate the areas of, where I could explore or what I could do, better in. But then at times he did give me guidance and direction. And I found that to be very helpful because, sometimes you don't know. So
yeah, that's great.
I've had that experience too, where sometimes people come in and they're not familiar with what the coaching experience is like, and it's being compared to, or the expectations are being set to as if they were in a classroom setting or a teacher
Mm,
setting. And then also what influences that too is when, different cultures have a different level of respect and appreciation for someone who's deemed their coach or an authority. And you have to do a lot of level setting, breaking down those barriers and saying, listen, I'm not your professor. I'm not your, I remember I had someone ask me, like they want more homework. And I'm like, we're not in class. You know, you you can read, but with the homework that's happening, this is not a homework where you have to take a test and I'm gonna grade you.
mm,
This is a different type of integrative homework where you
mm,
you practice in your day-to-day work,
mhm,
creating those boundaries, creating
mhm,
those spaces. So
mhm,
just helping them to understand the difference between that coaching approach and leadership
mhm,
and versus like a mentoring where you're telling them what to do. So I
mhm,
think that's one thing that would be helpful for a lot of leaders who might struggle with, listen, I'm here, you're supposed to tell me what to do, or I'm here and I don't have any agenda or goals. I'm hoping you would have some for me. Like,
mm,
no,
mhm.
no.
I think as a coach, and this is kind of going to a sidebar, it's really important to explain to leaders, whether they've had coaching or not, your style of coaching in comparison to things like consulting, mentorship, counseling, and group coaching or therapy, that type of thing. Because I've seen it in past where someone's definition of coaching is totally different than what's intended. So I think what you're pointing to is really setting up that relationship to ensure as a leader that you're owning the outcomes of your professional growth,
Mhm.
essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
Monique, I could talk to you all day on this stuff. I'd love to know, what is one thing that you would like to leave us with when it comes to today's market and leadership?
Well, you're your biggest asset, and the soft skills that you strengthen will amplify your success wherever you go.
Mhm.
Whether you're looking to change your industry, whether you want to make a lateral move, whether you want to, increase and be promoted, whether you want to just be a better mom or dad or
Mhm.
spouse,
Mhm.
partner. Literally, the soft skills approach will help you to accelerate in any arena. So don't overthink it. Just get started. Everything counts. Nothing's too big or too small, and you'll continue to be successful.
Said like a proud mom and leader.
And I am.
Intentional mom and leader, I should say.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you so much for your time, Monique. And how can we get a hold of you if we wanted to reach out to you, understand a bit more about your service offerings, or grab one of your books?
Yes, please do grab the books on Amazon. But you can reach me on clearcommunicationsolutions.com or moniquerussell.com. And you can also connect with me on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn, Monique Russell, Clear Communication Coach. I'm there, a few times a week, and I'm happy to connect, love connecting, meeting people, and continuing conversation.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
Thanks for listening to the Human Side of Business podcast. I'm glad you could join us. If you enjoyed today's episode and want to stay updated with our latest content, make sure to visit our website. The link can be found in the episode description, where you can subscribe to the podcast, sign up for our newsletter, and learn more about our whole person leadership services. Sounds interesting? Explore the Whole Person Leadership Cohort by Intuitive Performance, a unique program that offers unparalleled support to managers on every step of their leadership journey. Our program features evidence-based assessments, workbooks, group coaching, and interactive learning experiences to help you level up your leadership skills. Reach out today to apply to one of our upcoming cohorts. Until next time, take care and stay curious. Thanks for listening to the Human Side of Business podcast. I'm glad you could join us. If you enjoyed today's episode and want to stay updated with our latest content, make sure to visit our website. The link can be found in the episode description, where you can subscribe to the podcast, sign up for our newsletter, and learn more about our whole person leadership services. Sounds interesting? Explore the Whole Person Leadership Cohort by Intuitive Performance, a unique program that offers unparalleled support to managers on every step of their leadership journey. Our program features evidence-based assessments, workbooks, group coaching, and interactive learning experiences to help you level up your leadership skills. Reach out today to apply to one of our upcoming cohorts. Until next time, take care and stay curious.